Hello again. Welcome to a training video on the security system in PayPak Professional 4.0 and other Grano software products. This video focuses on the report access screen. There are other related videos which explain specific security features in greater detail, and I recommend that you invest a few minutes to take a look at them and master your knowledge of the security system. So let's log in and show you how it works. The security section is found under the admin portion of the menu, and here's the button. The security feature is accessible only to administrators. Regular users and supervisors are not allowed in the security section. So let's click on the button, and that brings up the main security screen, the main security window, and there's some options in here, and there's logins, groups, users. There's the option to reset table rights. There are training videos for this section here. There's a training video for logins, groups, and users, which covers these four topics here. There's a training video for database access. There's a training video for menu access. This is the training video which you're watching right now for report access, and there's a training video on email settings. So let's click on the report access button, and this is the report access screen. I'll give you a brief explanation of how it works, then we look at the layout of the screen, and then we go into detail on how it works. This screen is used where you have groups and users, or groups or users, and you wish to restrict or allow them access to a particular report or group of reports. Let me just move this across a little bit to get a little better view. All right, fine. So you may have a case where users access the report screen. There's certain reports you don't want them to have access to. This is the place to come to control that. And I should point out that this is different from the option users have to hide the reports which are available to them. A person who goes into the report screen, which is found here, the standard report screen, which is what most of these reports are applied to. A person who goes into the standard report screen has the option to hide reports. Let's just open that standard report screen. And right now no reports are hidden, but a user could come here and they can hide this report and that report. Save the settings. Those reports are hidden. That's hidden from them because they may just want to have a more focused view on reports they mainly use, but they can always come back and turn off the hidden reports at any time, or even have a temporary view of them. So that's the user's ability to hide their particular reports, and that is a personal user setting which each user can make for themselves. But this list of reports in here is quite long. In this particular database there are 245 reports. They are included in this list of 258 because some of these reports may be in other screens outside of the standard report screen. And if you do not want a person to see a report at all or to have access to it, this is where you come, restrict the access for them, and they will not see that report at all. So they will not even know it exists. You can also use the screen to display, to grant them access to a report which is currently blocked, which they have no access to, either permanently or temporarily. You give them access to it, they go and they print it, and then you turn off restrict the access again. Okay, that may be a need of, like if it's a emergency case or something. Now, so that's the main purpose of how the screen works. Now, for a layout let's explain the layout of the screen. You've got here the server to which you're connected, the database to which you're connected. You have three options here: group, it says office, and office again. What these are, group or user, this refers to the list of groups and users below, and as you scroll through that list, whichever record you are on, or you navigate to or highlight, their information for the group or user appears here. In effect, what you're doing is you're selecting the group or the user for which you are setting report access. When you first open the screen, it's highlighted at the first person. Now, to explain groups and users, let's have a look at the user screen. Let's open that. That's another part of the security. And looking in here, I can see there's a list of logins. There are actually 13 logins in this list. This list has a total of 12. And the reason it has a total of 12 is the users are the logins which have been assigned a user ID. And that's in this column here. This login, which is called test user, does not have a user ID, so that login is excluded from this count of users. Now, in the list, you have one administrator, which is Steve Corbin here, because he has a checkbox in the administrator column. There are three supervisors, which is Supervisor 1, Supervisor 2, and Supervisor 3. They have checkboxes here in the supervisor column, and that leaves 8 regular users, which would be Supervisor 1, sorry, not Supervisor 1, Supervisor 3. These are the ones who are not administrators, right? The user accounts for the ones who are not who are not administrators. So, or supervisors, 8 regular users. User accounts, that would be. Now, an administrator has full access to all features of the software. So you will not see in this list over here anyone who's an administrator. Supervisors and regular users may appear in this list if they are not members of a group. So let's start at the top here. The group called Office represents Supervisor 2, User 3, User 4, and User 5. When you assign access rights to the Office group, those rights are assigned automatically. That access is assigned automatically to the members of that group. Let's start at the top and go through the list of users. Jane Doe, John Doe, and Michael Smith are not in the list because they're members of the sales group, and that is listed here. Steve Corbin is not listed because he is an administrator. Supervisor 1 is not listed because Supervisor is a member of the sales group. Supervisor 2 is not listed because Supervisor 2 is a member of the Office group. Supervisor 3 is listed here as an individual user. Test user is not listed because test user is not a user assigned to this database. User 1 and User 2 are listed because they are not members of a group. They're listed here and here. And User 3, User 4, and User 5, they're not in the list because they are members of the Office group, which is listed at the top. So when you assign report access to the group called Office, you're assigning it to Supervisor 2, User 3, User 4, and user 5. And to assign the rights, it's a simple matter of coming here and turning on or off a particular report. Now, as you turn on or off the reports, clicking on this column, changing the settings in the Allow column automatically assigns the access, and it updates the display at the top, so I can see that for this user, they are this group, the users in this group, they're restricted from 3 reports in total. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I am going to turn off everything for the members of this office group. And to do that, I could come here and turn everything off. Now, for each group, the reports are sorted by group. So, and at the top of each group, there's an entry called All. That's not a report, that's just mentioning the group. If I turn that off, it asks me, do you want to apply this setting to all reports in this group? And everything, all entries, all reports in the accounting summaries group are turned off. If I turn it on, the prompt comes up again and I say yes, it turns everything on. Now, I may want to turn on most of them, or say I want to turn off some of them. I turn this off. If I say no to that, I can come in here and manually, well, I can do it regardless of what I chose afterwards. I could still come in here and turn off individual ones if I wanted to pick and choose who I wanted, as opposed to choosing all of them or none of them. So in this particular case, I'm only going to give report access. I'm going to grant report access to the members of office, the office group. I'm going to turn everything off first of all to make life easier, because I don't want to have their 256 reports they're allowed. I don't want to have to be coming in here and turn all these off. That could be quite tedious because the list is quite long. Much quicker to just click on the None button here. The None button turns off access to all the entries, and then I can come back and just tick the few that I want. So I want to give them access to accounting summaries, and I want to give them access maybe to a signature sheet. Let's say give them access to this signature sheet here. This signature sheet by category without amount. Right, just those 4 reports this group is allowed to access. So once I have granted them that access, I can now show the report screen and let you see what that looks like for members of this group. Now, before we look at that, however, I just want to go back and mention something more about the groups. Without a group, you would have to assign the rights individually for all of the users. Okay, so let's say you have a business and you have 15 users and they're set up individually. There is no group for them, but they access similar reports. They have similar functions within the organization. If one of those 15 persons leaves and a new person joins the company, let's say a person leaves and then maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, a replacement person comes and joins the company. Now, typically if someone leaves, you would be removing the login ID for that person, deleting their ID. You're going to be deleting the user ID for them as well, so that they have that login for them is not still functional, because you don't want someone who's left to be still having access to company records. It's good security practice to remove those rights and privileges of people who've left the company. They're no longer there. Now if the new replacement person comes along, they may come along a week after, 2 weeks after, like I said, maybe a month after, whatever period of time. When that new person comes along, you're going to add them, give them a login name, give them a user ID, and then you will have not only to assign the rights for them, you have to come like in this screen and reset. If your members, the 15 members, were only allowed access to certain reports, you have to come in here and set the rights, the access for that, for that person. You also have to remember which particular reports they had access to, because there are a lot of reports in here and you may not remember them all offhand. There is a way to copy the rights from one person to another. I will go into that a little later in the same demo. Now, that situation with a single user, that can be compounded if you add new staff. You've got 15 staff and the business is expanding. You bring on 10 more and they need access to the software too, for whatever reason. Having the group avoids having to set up the various types of access, because remember, it's not only the report access which you see here. New users must also have database access set up, menu access set up, report access set up, and email settings, if applicable, set up as well. So you'd be doing this 10 times, this 10 times, this 10 times, and that 10 times, right? Database access, menu access, report access, and email settings. That can be quite tedious and time consuming. And in the case of the email settings, that has various options for different users. You may have users who use the software to email documents, maybe to email invoices or quotations or payslips or whatever, and they may have a joint email account, and you may have to set that up, in the case of 10 new employees, 10 times for once for each employee. So making use of groups is an efficient way of managing your users and resources within the database, because what would happen is you create a group, you assign the report access rights, you assign the database access rights, the menu access rights, and the email settings, and then for those 10 new employees, all you have to do when they come on board, create the 10 logins, create the 10 user IDs, and then add them to the existing group, and the rights are assigned immediately. The rights and the access is assigned immediately, and it makes managing your groups and users much more efficient than having to do it individually. So let's go back to the Office group, which has been assigned rights to 4 reports, and these are the reports here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as a member of the Office group. Let's see who's a member of the Office. We've got user 3. So user 3 is a member of the Office group, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in as user 3. So user 3, enter the password, we log in. I'll just move their menu bar underneath mine, and this is the reports, and I click on standard reports, and there you go. I now have a much smaller list of reports. Let's move this. Let's see if we can pane the two. Let's go into reports for a regular person, or myself, who's not being restricted. All right, so this is the list that you would see if you're not restricted. You've got a full menu bar, full menu button bar here, and there's 245 reports. If I switch to the other user, user 3 who's signed in, as you can see, the button bar is much shorter. It's much more truncated now. It's only got the letter A and the letter S because these three reports begin with the letter A. This one report begins with the letter S. And these are the reports that that person is allowed to access. And this same option can be set, as I said, it can be set for the group. This applies to all members of that group. And if you wanted to do it for an individual, you can do the same thing too. So I'm going to close this login, the menu screen. I'm going to close this reports here. And we have members of the office having access to only 4 reports. Now let's look at user 1. User 1 has access to all the reports. If I wanted to block user 1 from having access to the same reports, I could come here and I could copy. There's a copy button here. I mean, these are just 3, so maybe I'll give a better example. Let's say there are not just 3, because 3 is easy. Turn it off and turn on 1, 2, 3. Okay? That's easy. Let's do something a little bit more time consuming to show you how this could be useful. This person, I don't want to have access to the batch gross pay reports at all. I don't want to have access to the check payment reports or the check payments, the check payment summary that was there, or anything to do with checks. Anything to do with checks, user 1 is not supposed to have access to. And I may randomly choose a few other reports that I don't want that person having access to. All right, so that's about it. Let's pick a few more down here as well. Some tax reports. Good. So we've got this person is allowed access to 22 reports out of 258. Now, if I knew, let's make it 25. Yeah, 225 now. So I've set the reports that user 1 is allowed access to. If I wanted to do the same settings for user 2, who is not in a group, it could be a bit tedious to have to mark those same reports from here. But there's a copy and paste option here, which allows me to highlight user 1, click on the copy button, and as soon as I click the copy, the paste button is enabled. I just then click on the user 2, and by clicking on paste, those report access rights are replicated for user 2. So that's a very quick way of assigning rights to someone else. And if user 2 happened to have 1 or 2 reports that were a little different, you can modify them in here and make, little fine tunes for user 2. So then user 2 is a little different from user 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in as user 1 and show you what user 1's report screen would now look like. So we go user 1, enter the password, click on login, and this is the menu for user 1. Click on reports, standard reports, and there you go. You now have a bit more expanded list of reports, more than the A and S that you had last time. On the tab button, on the key button bar, and there are reports that you can scroll through in here. And this person has the option of hiding whichever reports they want to see. So these are the 22 reports which this user has access to, and that is exactly the purpose of the report access screen in the security section of the software. So I'll just close that menu bar for that for user 1. Okay, so that was the copy and paste option. There is a print button here, and if you click on that, we can get a printout of the settings for this user. So you have, this is the security report access screen report, sorry. You have the name of the server, the name of the database, whether it's a group or a user, the ID of the user, and the name of the user. Then you have a list of the report groups and the reports. They're grouped by the report group, and then an indication of whether the user is allowed to access that report or restricted from accessing that report. Now, you can remember the example I gave of the employee who left and was replaced some weeks later. You can, if you want, print or save these reports as maybe Adobe PDF documents and save them somewhere, so that if someone comes along later, you can use this as a guide to set up the rights, which reports they will have access to. The replacement person, sorry, would have access to. Some users may find that, some customers may find that helpful, some may not find it helpful, but you know, it's the purpose of this demo to show you what features are available. So if you have a case where certain people are allowed access to certain things, you can file this, and either for the sake of replacement or for the sake of monitoring who has access to what, that's what this report could be used for. Especially by people who may not have access to enter the system, because if you print this and you make it available to others in the organization, maybe HR or management or whatever, then they can access these files without having to log into the payroll themselves. Okay, so that's the report. Next we have the settings button and the reset button. That controls this divider, which comes down the screen. I can move this bar a little more to the right or left, and when I hit the settings button, when I reload the screen, open the screen next time, it's positioned exactly where I set the location when the settings button was clicked. To reset, to clear those settings, you click the reset button, and if you say yes to that, it'll reset it, and I think the default option is the divider is halfway across the screen. If I maximize this, you'll see it looking like that. I could position it in the center like that if I wanted to. I could push this far over to the right, or I could push this further over to the left. All a matter of your particular choice. Then we have the video button, and that's for this same video which you are watching. If you're in this software and there's something you wanted to remember about how to use the features of the screen, click the button and it will open your browser to the YouTube video of this very same demo. So that is it for this video. We have looked at the options here for the screen. We have looked at the total section here, which summarizes the reports which have been to which the user has been allowed or blocked from accessing. and we've looked at the groups and users and how they are constituted, and how that groups and users setup works. We've also looked at the buttons at the bottom of the screen. Refresh will refresh the screen display. I'm just going to go back and give everyone access to all the reports as I close off this video. Also note that when you open the screen, the very first group or users highlighted, and that's the records you see. If you wanted to see all of them, just come to the list and scroll through, and then you can reset them as necessary. So that's the all and none button, which we got here. There was the copy and paste. We looked at the print out. We looked at the settings and reset button. There's this video from which we're now going to say thank you for spending time with us, and we encourage you to look at the other training videos, because if your job requires that you have some sort of responsibility over the report access, then out of necessity you are in charge of security at some level, and you should familiarize yourself with the database access options, the menu access, and the email settings sections of the security. So thank you very much, and goodbye until next time.